This video, I'm gonna do a quick tier list for all of the characters in Fairy Tail Fierce Fight. Now, one thing up front is that obviously I do not have all of the characters, so I'm basing my tier list based on my read of the various different skill description of different characters, and also I have tried them in the skill preview where you're able to just kind of mess around with all of their skills, etc. Now, obviously, the skill preview is not the same as a real battle because the enemy doesn't move, and also the damage you do to those enemies are always capped to just one. So maybe when you actually do have the character and actually play them out, it's gonna be slightly different to the way I am gonna describe in my tier list. But unfortunately, unless you have all of the characters, otherwise you are not able to make a comprehensive tier list to cover all of the angles. And I do kind of want to release this tier list early because, first of all, it's just not gonna be realistic to have all of the characters for a very, very long time, and I don't want to have keep on delaying making this tier list. And then the second thing is, I know some of you are starting out in the game wanting to know which characters you really want to focus on because it does cost some resources to, first of all, upgrade their skills, upgrade their leader skill, upgrade their uh, equipments, also equip them with those magic stones, etc. So it does cost a lot of resources. So you do want to at least focus on some characters who you know will turn out to be good. So hopefully this tier list will be able to provide you with enough information for you to make those decisions. And obviously, if you do have certain characters and you disagree with what I'm saying, then that's absolutely fine. Obviously, tier list is always just subjective. But if you could let me know in the comment section, and that will greatly help me out as well as other people who are watching the video, just so that collectively, the community as a whole, we can understand exactly how good every single character is, even if we, do not have them all by ourselves. All right, so that's enough of an intro. In terms of tiers themselves, I have 5 tiers. It's the kind of just a standard S tier A, B, C. However, for S tier, I have split out into 2 rows. One are the characters who I think are very good as soon as you unlock their 4th skill. It is actually very important for you to be at 4 star, to unlock their 4th skill because normally that's the strongest skill. So you normally do want to unlock that. But then I also have some characters who I think only really truly shine when you have them at 6 star plus 3. And what I mean by 6 star plus 3 is that after 6 star, there are 3 different um, extra passive that you are able to unlock by spending more shards or fragments as well. So if you just have a character simply at 6 star, that's not enough. 6 star, I don't actually think unlock anything new. I think normally you unlock something new at 4 star, and then you unlock something new at 6 star when you don't unlock those extra passive one by one. So that's kind of what I mean by this role, where not only you need to have the character at 6 star, but you need to unlock all of the extra passive as well. So that's kind of the way I would describe both my tiers. Now, starting off with the first row. So the first one I have is Wendy. I already talked about her a lot in my reroll guide. So if you do want to know a bit more about her, then just check out that video. But yeah, in my opinion, she is an absolute staple in pretty much everything. She is the best healer in the game, and she's able to do decent amount of damage as well. She's able to carry you very, very far in PvE. So I think she's just very good. And also on top of that, she's the only SR I put on this tier, and I think she truly deserves that spot. So that's another good selling point for her as well because it's very easy for you to get dupes of her to level her up. Then the next one I have is Juvia. Juvia is absolutely amazing, and you get her for free as well as part of the beginner event. So that's very nice. She basically have 1 control skill, 2 debuff skill. No, she has 2 control skill, 2 debuff skill, which is absolutely amazing because what normally you can do is you apply the 2 control skill, and when the enemy is being controlled, you then apply the debuff, and when the enemy have all of the debuff stacked on, you then switch out to your DPS to do the actual high amount of damage. So Juvia doesn't do much damage herself, but as a support unit, she's like as good as you can get in this game. So that's why she is also very, very nice. Then the next person is Hot High. Hot High has skill which basically reduce your movement speed by 50%, I believe, and that's really really annoying. Because as soon as you are hit with that, you are not able to move, and then it kind of allow him to do all other kind of crazy stuff on you, or just swap out to a different character to do the damage. So very similar to, I guess, how Juvia would work. So he's just a very very good character as well. Then the next one we have is Racer. Racer is extremely fast, so that is gonna be, I think, very very useful mainly in PvP. One thing in PvP is that, first of all, if you're facing up against Racer, he is gonna move around all the time. It's gonna make it really hard to actually battle against him. So that's one thing already. And then also, if you're actually using Racer himself, what you can do is you can actually move so fast that you just hide around in a corner, wait for your cooldown to come out. Obviously, this works in PvE as well, but I think in PvP it's a bit more important because the enemy also have skills, and this kind of allow you to dodge their skills a lot easier as well. So I do feel like Racer is a very, very good character for those reasons. Then the next one I have is I forgot his name. Let me double check. Makarov, right? Let me check. Yeah, Makarov. Makarov is I think I am somewhat debating on whether he deserved to be one of the best characters, but I think he is definitely playable at 4 star rather than 6 star, which is kind of why in the end I still decided to put him here. But basically, he is able to do a lot of skills, which I feel have a quite wide range. Like the skill description says short range, but if you actually face against him in PvP, or if you actually tried him out in the skill preview section, you then realize actually his range is pretty big. Like the description is not quite true to the actual amount of damage he's able to do. And then on top of that, he has a bit of like self-sustain with like healing up HP after he stack up multiple times as well. So I do feel like he's a pretty decent character for you to use. Then the next one we have is Luxus. Luxus do really high amount of damage. He is also able to, I think he had pretty decent range as well, from what I can remember. And also when he's actually releasing his skill 4, he has invincibility, which makes him immune to all damage of control. And that's also very, very nice. So that's kind of why I also put him here. Then the next person is Jose. Jose, I'm not sure whether I'm reading his skill description correctly, but basically, if you read his skill 4, he is able to summon something that would do 41% damage per second for 20 seconds. So if you actually times them out, that's 800% damage scaling, which sounds absolutely ridiculous when if you compare to all of the other characters, they are normally like around the 100 mark. So just for that reason alone, I think he needs to be 4 star. Now, this is one thing I'm not too sure because, like I said, in the actual skill preview section, when you do use a character, all of the damage is capped to only one. So it's really hard for me to tell whether this is actually true and whether this works in real battle as well. So I think I'm going to put a question mark on him. But if it's actually as good as what the skill description read, then I think he definitely deserves one to be one of the best character in the game. And then the next character I have is Midnight. I think. Yeah, so Midnight, she is able to, actually no, I think it's he, right? He's able to do, let me just double check his skill again. I'm not very familiar with all the characters yet. Okay, so he's a dark character. He's able to do decent amount of range. Oh, okay, I remember him now. So he's able to reduce the enemy speed by 80% for his skill 2, which is very, very nice. So like even better version of Hot Eye. And on top of that, he actually does really high damage scaling, and he can be selected or have control immunity when he uses the skills. So that gives him that kind of like defensive ability as well, so that you are making sure that all of your attack actually land. So that's kind of why I feel he is a very very good character. Then Jalal has very like a lot of controls. He also have good elemental coverage, being light and dark at the same time, and also just do decent damage as well, and also very good range. So Jarrell is definitely up here. Then I keep on forgetting names here. Ikaruga. Ikaruga already mentioned her in my video yesterday, talking about whether you should pull her or not. So just check out that video for of those, insights about how what kind of character she is and whether I think she's good or not. But a basic summary is that because of the fact she's able to do very high range and also high damage output, and on top of that, she has a leader skill which is able to reduce the enemy mobility. That to me is a very, very comprehensive kit for any character, so that's why she's also very good. Then the next person, this is another one similar to Makarov that I am kind of debating on whether actually deserves a spot, but she is definitely playable at 4 stars, so that's kind of why I put it here. And also, she's gonna be another type of character who's like even more limited. So it kind of shout out to me in my head that she has to be good in order to deserve how expensive or how much resource you need to actually build her. But basically, this version of Urzo, just stack up. I can't remember what's the name of the thing, but she needs to stack up a certain thing. I think up to 20 times or 30 times, and then she do a crazy amount of damage because per stack she gets some extra buff. So that basically means if you're able to make the battle goes out longer, she's potentially able to do insane amount of damage. But whether she's actually gonna survive long enough in order to do of that part I'm not too sure without actually having the character to try in real life. So that's kind of why I also have a bit of a question mark on how good she actually is in real life when you do use her. So that's kind of all of the ones who on paper sounds really, really strong, even at 4 star. Then for the next row, I have those ones who I think really need to be maxed out. Leon is absolutely crazy when you max him out. Basically, he has a 15% chance to freeze the enemy with his skills. And considering he has 2 skills who are able to do that, and then I think he also have another skill who can freeze by default, I believe. Basically, half of the time when you're fighting the enemy just gonna be frozen. It's just absolutely insane. So that's why I think Leon is very, very good if you are able to max him out completely. Nasu is very similar to Jose, which kind of make me doubt about the damage output he's able to do. When you have Nasu completely maxed out, what's gonna happen is that his skill 4 is able to burn the damage. Sorry, is able to burn the enemy, dealing 35% scaling of damage for 10 seconds. So that's 350% scaling, which once again, very, very high in comparison to any of the other characters. And even right now, when I'm actually playing Natsu, obviously nowhere near high enough stars, but still, he is able to do insane amount of damage. So I think he definitely deserves that spot when he is maxed out. Then we have Gray. Gray, let me double check him. Gray's, I remember his leader skill is very good by default already because he is able to give defense penetration, I believe, which is always nice in any kind of game. Because if you are battling up against enemies who are higher level than you, which is often the case in PvE battles, that normally means the enemy have really high defense. So defense penetration is always nice in any kind of game. So that's there. Then the other thing is when he's maxed out, he is also able to get, I think, let me double check. He's able to get a static 30% damage increase, but no condition needed, which is just like what the heck. So I think like 30% damage increase, and then he can also get 20% damage reduction, and then on top of that, the default 10% defense penetration. He just kind of have loads of buffs built in by default when you max him out, which is why I think like just from that alone, he's already very good. And then if you actually talk about his actual skills itself, he obviously have control built in into a lot of his attacks, so that's also very nice as well. Then the next character we have is Gildas. Once again, I talked about him in yesterday's video when I kind of reviewed Gildas and Ikaruga. to see whether they're actually worth summoning or not. What I didn't mention yesterday, and that's because I kind of skip out all of those 6-star passive yesterday because it wasn't really realistic, and I didn't want that to be one factor in deciding whether to summon or not because you definitely wouldn't be able to get him at 6-star straight away. But if you do eventually get him to 6-star, what's going to happen is that he is going to be able to, let me check, he is able to do additional damage equal to 20% of HP. Now, this is very crazy for me in PvP because 20% scaling based on HP is normally going to mean a lot more than attack because HP normally just much larger than attack. Because if you think about it, if your attack is high enough, then higher than HP, then just one shot of the enemy. So 20% of HP is actually very nice. And then basically what that means is that he is kind of guaranteed a certain amount of minimum damage because this is scaling off on his HP as well. So this is very strong. So I kind of feel like he's justifying the spot when you do have him maxed out. Then what we have is Angel. I think that's her name. Let me double check. Yeah, Angel. Angel 6-star, she has the ability. So first of all, Angel, her kit kind of involves around copying one ally. So you're kind of like summoning someone who is like an exact replicate of one of your ally. And then at 6-star, the ally you have copied will have skill reduction by 50%. So that to me is a very, very useful utility skill, especially when you pair it up with certain characters who have really long cooldowns, like 40 seconds or 50 seconds. That is absolutely amazing that you're able to just reduce it by half straight away. Because what you can do is you can use one character, use that massive, strong ultimate skill, swap into Angel, do a few attacks, reduce the cooldown by half, and then swap back into your first character to use the special skill again. So that's kind of why I feel like she has a lot of use just from like a utility perspective. And then the next character we have is this Mirror Jane. Now, Mirror Jane at 6-star, let me check what is again. Okay, so Mirror Jane at 6-star is able to have something called Magic Seed, which basically give her a second life. And when this is done, what's going to happen is that it's going to refresh the cooldown for. Oh wait, actually no, I read that wrong. Previously I thought it was going to delete the cooldown, but actually this is refreshing the cooldown. So that actually potentially means you won't be able to use the skill again. I think I'm not too sure now. Then I think she probably still deserves this spot just for the fact that she has a second life. Um, well, 1.5 life because the second life is only 50% of HP. But just from that alone, it's already a quite nice buff because she is also like a massive damage dealer. For a damage dealer to have a second life, that makes it very, very dangerous. So I think that she probably deserves this spot as well, but only when she's at 6-star. So that's gonna be all of the characters I think are at S tier. Then moving on to A tier, the first one I have is Brain. I think Brain is it's a very, very interesting one. There's one skill, I think his skill 2 I really don't like, which is like a long range attack, but he's not able to move. That to me is an awful skill, but his other skills have really nice range. If I remember correctly, his skill 1 and skill 3 is able to push back the enemy. It fires into a straight line, it's able to push back the enemy, so that creates some distance for you, which you can, first of all, you can potentially, run around to wait for your cooldown to finish, or that kind of makes you available to set up for your next skill from a different teammate as well, which I do think is quite nice. And then on top of that, his leader passive increase wind damage, I believe, for the whole team. So he's going to be very good in mono wind team if that ever becomes the same. So I think he is definitely justified a spot, but in terms of the actual kit itself, I just don't think it's strong enough to compete against the other players other characters I have above. Then the next person is Arya. Arya's leader skill is very useful, and I think he is going to be very good as a utility character, which is that he is able to. I think he might be the only one I've seen so far able to increase magic attack for the whole team. Like the buff to increase physical attack, there's like two characters, there's Nasu and also Gajo, but for magic attack, for some reason, there's only area. So I think for that reason, he is very solid. Even if you don't actually use him, just put him in the leader spot. I think that's already going to be very useful. His attack have really long range as well. So I think you're definitely able to hit the enemies. But the damage output itself is not too amazing. So that's kind of why I only put him this tip. Then the next one I have is Soul. Yeah, so have a lot of control abilities, but I think he's somewhat similar to Arid in the sense that he doesn't like he has lots of control, but his damage output is not amazing. So basically, what happens is that you kind of use him to for the control, and then you have to swap out for to a different character to do the actual damage itself. So in some sense, I guess it's like a weaker version of Juvia because Juvia is able to debuff as well, but So is not able to, I believe. So for that reason, I think he is just okay. Um, oh, actually, wait. Yeah, he doesn't do any debuff. He increases his own damage, but his damage output is pretty bad from the beginning, so it doesn't really make much difference. All right. Then the next person is Gajo. Gajo do insane amount of attacks. Like if you ever face him in PvP, or if you use him yourself, you would then realize his damage output is crazy, but he's very fragile. His the fact he's fragile kind of get amended somewhat if you do have him at 6 star because then he's able to I think like recover HP I believe. But yeah, he's just kind of your typical glass cannon. His attacks have really long range as well, which is nice, and he is able to stun. So overall, very good character. Just a bit too fragile for me to put him as an S tier, but definitely a very solid character. Aragorn, similar kind of um, same as Gajo. Really high, well, not really high, but like very decent damage output. Have a bit of stun, which once again very similar to Gajo. And then he also have a bit of invincibility when he's at using his skill 4, which is very nice. So that kind of like helps out a tiny bit from the fact that he's so fragile. The only thing I don't quite like about him is that his skill 4 is definitely the best skill, but his skill 4 has 50-second cooldown. So pretty much you'll be using it once and then never again. So that's the one thing which I don't really like. So I don't really want to put him up too high for that reason. Then we have Biska. Biska is very interesting. Biska's best skill is skill 1. Like her skill 1 is ridiculously high scaling in comparison to other people's skill 1. Have 30-second cooldown to kind of compensate for that, I guess. But still, that's her skill 1 is comparable to other people's skill 4, their ultimate skill, and the cooldown is shorter than other people's special skill. So I kind of think she deserves a spot just for that. Then we have the last one in A tier is what's his name? Totomaru. Now Totomaru do a bit of a burn damage. I think the main reason why I put him in A tier is more for his leader skill, where he's able to increase fire attack by 10%. There are some really good fire attacker like Natsu and also Razor. So just for that leader skill ability, I think that's going to be very nice in a mono fire team if that becomes the same. And then also he is able to do damage over time. And one thing I have found in this game is that damage over time seems to do a lot of damage if you actually, multiply everything up together. So I think he kind of deserved that spot for that reason. Okay, so now we move on to the B tiers, who I feel like are characters who are somewhat niche. Normally, you probably wouldn't play them because there would be better alternative. But I guess as a worst case scenario, then they're not the worst character in the game, so I guess you can potentially still use them every now and then. Starting off with Cobra and Mystigan. Cobra is able to do a bit of poison, which is nice. His attacks are fairly easy to use and also long range, and also he's a dark element. So I think like at the beginning, because there's a lot of dark coverage, that kind of makes him stand out at the very beginning. But other than that, I don't really see anything special about him. There's not too much extra things outside of his pure damage, which normally makes a character quite easy to be power crept in future because he doesn't really offer anything extra that distinguishes him from other characters. So that's kind of why he's in B tier, in my opinion. Mystigan is able to do a few things which are a bit more niche. He's able to put enemies into sleep, although the enemy would be free from that status as soon as you attack them. So I do wonder how much use that actually is. He's also able to do a lot of control immunity, both for himself and also for your whole team. So which I think is actually very very nice. But once again, that's somewhat situational depending on the enemy you are facing, whether it's actually doing any control effects in the first place. So that's kind of why I feel like Mystican is more of like a niche character where you only play every now and then if you are facing up against enemies who do lots of controls, etc. Then the next character is Levy. Levy is interesting. I want to say Levy is able to do four different type of element attack, which makes it sound really nice on paper in order to break enemy shields. However, what I have actually found out in practice is that because she only have one attack for each element, even though she is able to break the shield, but you have to then wait for the cooldown for that skill in order to keep on breaking the shield. So even though she has that capability in real life, it doesn't really justify using sorry, it doesn't really justify using her much because even though break she can break the enemy shield with one of her skills. You have to wait for a cooldown in order to use again. So the actual break efficiency is not very high, and I do wonder whether it's actually worth bringing her in rather than just let's say a traditional DPS who doesn't have elemental advantage because you're only missing on one attack, so maybe it doesn't really make much difference anyway. What does really make her stand out and kind of justify why I put her in B tier is more the fact that when you actually have her at 6 star, she's able to increase the entire team's break efficiency by an extra. So all of her skills will do extra 30% damage to shield, but all the other wizards in your team are able to do an extra 15% damage as well. So that kind of makes her a very good utility character to have in your story mode, etc. Whenever you face enemy with like a shield, which is very annoying, just bringing her in and it'll make life a lot easier. So that's kind of my read on this character. Okay, then the next one is Lucy. Lucy is okay as an R character. I think she's definitely one of the decent ones, let's say. I don't think she's the best, but she's definitely not bad because she does have two control skills, which can be handy every now and then. But what really kind of justify her spot in B tier is more the fact that when you actually max her out, she is able to increase the control effect for your whole team by 50%, which to me can be very, very annoying every now and then because let's say if you are actually playing in a very control heavy team, having her there just as a utility character I think can actually improve your team's performance as a whole. So that's kind of why I have her here. Not so much of the actual damage or the attacks she had, but more from that utility perspective. Okay, then the next person I have is Otia. Let me quickly remind myself what does she do again. Okay, so she is able to create a small space where all of the allies in there are gonna be immune to control effect and also benefit from various different buffs like reduce CD, etc., reduce cooldown, etc. The thing is that this is only gonna be useful in situations where you will be quickly swapping her out, or in those maps where you will be using her in you'll be all three of your teammates will be coming out to fight at the same time. I don't know what's it called, but basically, some of the game modes is where you just control one character, where some game modes is you control one character, but then the other two also come out and attack at the same time. They will just be controlled by the AI. So for those kind of situation, I think OTA will be very nice. Otherwise, you kind of just be playing OTA as kind of like a pivot character. You'll be using you'll be using OTA to create this space and then quickly switch out to a different character in order to benefit from the buff. But that's kind of why I also feel this is a very niche scenario where you'll be playing her. So that's kind of why I have her at B tier. Then the next person I have is what's his name again? Kageyama. Um, Kageyama. One very important reason of why I put him here is actually he is the only, I think, low rarity dark element coverage you can get early on in the game. Like I think out of all of the R and SRs, the only ones who have dark elemental coverage is O tier, um, Kageyama, and also Ichia. However, Ichia and Otia they are actually split. So Otia does dark and wind, and Ichia does dark and light, whereas Kageyama have all dark elements for all of his attacks, and that basically makes him the best dark element coverage for you early on in the game until you have one of the SSRs who are able to do dark damage, etc. So that's kind of why Kageyama kind of deserves a spot just for that. He will be very useful early game in order to break any dark shields, etc. But in terms of his actual skill itself, it's not too bad either. He does have a control ability, which is for a pretty decent amount of time, and also his leader skill is not bad either because he's able to increase all of the magic defense and also physical defense by 10%, and also kind of I think he is himself have damage reduction. So overall he can be somewhat annoying for you to battle against because he is somewhat bulky and he's able to control you. So that's kind of why he also deserves this B spot. And then last but not least, we have Urzo. Urzo doesn't have any elemental coverage, so that's kind of like a negative point about her. Her actual skill itself is somewhat handy, not because of the damage it does, but because she offers a lot of immobility control effects and also control prevention. I believe she has like things like super armor, um, which kind of makes her immune to all controls, and also potentially some other things as well. I can't actually remember. But the main thing that really shines for me for her is the fact that she, if you actually appoint her as your leader, her leader skill is able to reduce the CD for by 10% for everyone on your team, which is actually very nice. That's just a straight off cooldown reduction. So that's just a very nice skill to have every now and then. But that you have to bear in mind, you will be placing her into a team purely for that utility perspective. So you could potentially be compensated for the fact that you're not doing enough damage. So that's kind of why I do feel she has some niche issues, and that's kind of why she's in the B tier. As for all of the other characters, I'm not going to go through all of them. They're all in C tier for me. I read through all of their skills, but none of them really stand out to me. Either they just do lots of damage, but doesn't really have any additional benefit, which kind of you're not able to justify playing them over a different character who is able to do a similar amount of damage but also have additional control effects or debuff effects, etc. Or they're kind of just not very useful, full stop. So I'm not going to go through them.